See you.
Right. All right. Good morning and welcome to the January 23rd, 2023 regular meeting of the San Diego Community Power Board of Directors. Welcome to the board members here in attendance and those participating remotely. I am Joe LaCava, presiding officer of the board and the representative for the city of San Diego. Also welcome to the members of the public joining us today. And as I said, especially those newly sworn in board members. I will now call the January 23rd, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power to order. Kimberly, will you please call the roll?
City of San Diego representative,
LaCava, present.
County of San Diego representative,
Kara, present.
Imperial Beach representative,
Aguirre, present.
La Mesa representative,
Parent present.
National City representative,
Yamani present.
Chula Vista representative,
John McCann present.
Encinitas representative.
Kelly Lindsay, present.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Kimberly. So we'll now go to Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can, please stand, face the flag, hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. As I said, we have a quorum present. Kimberly, I believe we have one special presentation. Chandra?
Yes. Hello, good
Yes.
morning, everyone. My name is Chandra Pugh. I'm the new director of people for the organization. This is my third week, so very happy to meet all of you. I have over 15 years of human resources experience, and I'm just excited to join the team. I'm local. I'm from Oceanside, California, and just good morning.
Good morning. Well, welcome, Chandra. It's an amazing team that they have here and terrific board. So we look forward to it. Especially the presiding officer. He's amazing. So
And humble.
anyway, I'm glad to see we got that position filled. It's really part of that growing organization. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
The organization. So moving along, there was no closed session today, and therefore there's no items to be report. Are there any items to be added, withdrawn, or reordered on the agenda?
No, there aren't.
Okay, so we will start up with non-agenda public comment. Kimberly, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
See, there are no written comments, but we do have one hand raised. Let me see. Jeff Osborne. Mr. Osborne, you have 3 minutes to state your comment.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, actually good morning to the board. My name is Jeffrey Osborne. I'm a resident of Jacumba Hot Springs. I'm a community organizer and I'm on the Jacumba Hot Springs sponsor group and a business owner in Jacumba Hot Springs. Some of you may be familiar with Jacumba and the recent controversy over the JVR Energy Park. My comment here today is just to bring attention to the JVR Energy Park to the new board and past board members that may have been involved in any decision-making regarding that project. It is a over 500-acre solar facility being placed directly adjacent to our community within hundreds of feet. This project in particular is high impact, and I just am asking the board to look at this project on its own. We do appreciate what SDCP is doing in providing alternative power to the grid and options for us even out in rural communities as a new member through the county. But we think this project in particular does not align with San Diego Community Power's goals of providing equity and social justice to communities in San Diego. Our community is extremely low income. Our household income is only $36,000. We are over 50% Latina, and we are over 11% Native American. We are extremely disadvantaged. And this project in particular would devastate our community. It would literally overshadow it 6 times its size and be directly next to it. I submitted a letter from the Jacumba sponsor group that we voted on to submit to the board it has incredible opposition from our community. We are a community of 500. And when this item was up for the Board of Supervisors, we had over 200 members drive over 1 hour to come to that meeting. I mean, to say that we are united in opposition to this is an understatement. And we just hope the board reconsiders this project if it was to come up for reconsideration for a power purchase agreement. It is my understanding it will need to renegotiate its power purchase agreement due to changes in costs. And they have also pitched another concept regarding batteries to me that seems like maybe a compromise between us and the community and even SDCP. But they were told maybe that would have to happen too quickly. That is physically possible due to permitting timelines. So I'm here just as a advocate for my community and hoping that the board is aware of this project is controversial and is going to impact a disadvantaged community that is one of its own members. And we hope you guys can consider us and even consider alternatives that might be a good compromise for both the community, San Diego at large, and our goals for decarbonization. Thank you.
All right, we always appreciate the members of the public calling in and sharing their thoughts. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Are there any directors that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Items 1 through 7. Not seen any requests to pull an item.
Motion to approve the consent calendar. So moved.
Thank you, Mayor.
Second that.
And we have a second by Council Member Parent. With that, Kimberly, please call the roll.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote? Hensy is blocking. Oh, there she is. Oh. Right. Director Hensy, how do you vote on the consent agenda? Director Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
McCann, aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Yes.
Interim Presiding Officer LaCava, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. And I'll go to I'll move on to the regular agenda, item number 8. Ryan, I think Ryan Barron, our legal counsel, will introduce item 8.
Thank you, Presiding Officer LaCava. Good morning, or board members. I was gonna say good afternoon. I forgot what time it was. Item number 8 on the agenda is the election of the chair and vice chair for calendar year 2023. The joint powers agreement calls for a chair vice chair election at the first regular meeting of the board, which would be today. Those two positions currently have vacancies. Former chair Mosca and prior vice chair Padilla are no longer in elected office for their respective member agencies. So there is a vacancy in those positions. In anticipation of that vacancy, the board in November had appointed Mr. LaCava as presiding officer to preside over the December meeting and this January meeting until the chair and vice chair positions were elected. So it is the process is to sort of take nominations from the floor for the chair position and for the whole roll call vote, take nominations for the vice chair position and hold a separate roll call vote. So I sort of leave it up to the board as to how you'd like to have. Yes, sir.
I would like to nominate Councilmember Joe LaCava as the chair. So moved.
I'll second that.
Graciously, thank you, Mayor.
We do have a public comment. Should I read that?
Yes, there's a motion for Director LaCava to be chair with a second, and I believe we have public comment on this item.
Yes, from Matthew Vasilakis. Good morning, afternoon. This is Matthew Vasilakis speaking on behalf of myself and support of board member Joe LaCava becoming the next SDCP board chair. At the City of San Diego, Councilmember LaCava has a proven track record of leadership on climate, energy, and equity policy with a strong regional perspective, willingness to engage all stakeholders, and a firm handle on an array of complex issues. I hope the board concurs and grants board member LaCava with the chair position. Thank you.
And I can just say, I agree with this. I'm going to vote for it. I'm a new board member. Just about everyone's a new board member, and so I think it's especially important that we have some Can I say this is polite? Seasoned leadership. To help lead the board, this input here.
I'll look at the gray hair and say, yes, you can say. so.
Right, I'm great, I am great enough, I can say that. Okay, very good.
Is there additional?
Yes, we have two hands
Okay.
raised. Joyce Lane, you have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Good morning. My name is Joyce Lane and I'm a volunteer with San Diego 350. And I also want to urge you to support Councilmember LaCava as the chair for San Diego Community Power in 2023. As someone else has said, he's had seasoned leadership and he has taken a lot of leadership on the city council and with San Diego Community Power. And so we urge you to support him as the chair for 2023. Thank you.
Karina Gonzalez, you have 3 minutes to make your public comment.
Good morning, board members. My name is Karina Gonzalez. I'm with Hammond Climate Solutions Foundation. I am also calling in to just extend my support for board member LaCava to be elected as chair. Thank you.
Not sure why.
There we go.
Was she sharing during that? Okay, hold on. The presentation is not sharing.
It looks fine.
It is- it
It
does.
looks fine from an attendee
Okay,
perspective.
all right, got it. Okay. Okay, there are no additional public comments.
Thank you, Kimberly. Why don't you call the roll, please?
Call the roll or take a vote.
Or vote.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah,
Roll call.
roll call.
Okay. City of San Diego representative,
LaCava, yes.
County of San Diego representative,
Lawson Reamer, yes.
Imperial Beach representative,
Aguirre, yes.
La Mesa representative,
Karen, yes.
National City representative,
Yamani, yes.
Chula Vista representative,
Chula Vista McCann, aye.
Encinitas representative.
Kinsey, yes.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Kimberly. Just a quick note, thank you for the honor. Very excited to work with you all here on this board with the 2 of us that are returning and the 5 of you that are coming in. Former council member Joe Mosca, who was our chair for the first 3+ years, really set the tone, I think, of what this position means. I intend to really keep it. The close collaboration between all of our cities is critically, and the county, excuse me, is critically important for this still young organization and its growth going forward and how we meet this very high expectation that we've set for this organization. So again, thank you. So Ryan?
Thank you. The next half of the item is to select a vice chair among you in the same process that just selected the chair.
Through the chair. I nominate Supervisor Tara Reamer Lawson to be vice chair.
I'll second that.
I think you sucked it, right?
You got there first?
Yeah.
Yeah. Late to the meeting, first to second.
There we go. And it's exactly that tone of how we're going to be ready. We got serious work to do, but I mean, we can't enjoy each other's company. With that, no other comments or discussion. Please call the vote.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, yes.
Director Hinsey, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Lawson Reamer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
McCann, aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Yamani, yes.
Interim presiding officer LaCava, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Karen,
He's a chair now. We elected him.
Oh, but okay,
I was there.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Fast moving organization. Thank you, Kimberly.
Can I say a couple of words?
Yes. Oh, yes, please. Sorry.
But I'm just really excited. This is just such a great organization. So I think everyone who's new, welcome. I think you're going to really enjoy your time on this board. And I feel like this is one of those opportunities that we have to actually really make a difference in our leadership, because it's still new, it's still evolving, and the vision that we bring can really make a really positive impact on our community, not just now, but for the next, foreseeable future for generations to come. As we think about all the ways in which energy impacts our climate and our quality of life. So I'm excited and thank you.
Great. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 9, which is the appointment of members to the Finance and Risk Management Committee. Ryan or Karen, do you have any comments you want to introduce this item? This is the only standing committee that we have. We talked a little bit about this at the board orientation on Wednesday. We do need, I'm still going to say 3. Technically, I'm still on it until I resign, which I will do immediately upon the 3. So rather than turn it over to the board members for a motion, I'm going to ask for volunteers. This is okay. So we have Mayor McCann, Councilmember Parent.
Aguirre's interested.
Gary, okay. So can someone turn that into a motion?
I'll move those 3.
Second.
Okay.
So to clarify, there's 2 vacancies, so it would be 3 appointments.
Yes, okay. Pending me stepping down, I'll do whatever you advise that it takes for me to step down.
Just to pause for a second there, I think that, correct me, maybe the council can point this out to you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a chair appointment that's ratified as opposed to something that's motioned.
I believe the board appoints to the standing committee, and on the ad hoc committees, the board will form the committee and the chair will appoint to the ad hoc committees.
Okay, great.
And then you can also have regular directors and alternates appointed to the standing committee, and your alternate can also serve in your place if you can't then attend.
I will share with everyone that I've told Jack, my alternate in La Mesa, that I will plan to participate directly, but he may have to occasionally step in and participate.
Would you mind just giving us a little bit of background of the time commitment, how often that committee meets?
So it is scheduled to meet once a month. Most months are simply to receive the treasurer's report, but you also get first indication of anything to do with finance, budget, power purchase agreements, things of that nature. Risk management in terms of, fortunately, so far that's been minimal, but it's more a risk from a financial point of view, revenue versus expenses. So you get first run at that in a more formal setting than the individual board briefings that you'll, I believe you've received for this meeting. So
Great. And they're still meeting virtually?
correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, so they'll meet virtually in February, but starting in March, they will have to meet in person.
Yes, there's some ability, I believe, under AB 361 to continue to meet in very limited circumstances virtually, but without the governor's order in place, unless there's local social distancing regulations still being advised, it's an in-person from March 1st on.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I actually want to just add on this. It's not actionable today. It might take a while to be actionable, but just putting out there, if we did want to create a framework to allow more virtual meetings to continue after March, not just for the financial board, but also for our board, we'd have to put together a policy, and it's doable. And then there's sort of like 2 routes. You could have you get like 2 just cause excuses and 5 emergency excuses to not show up in person in a year. So that's that, and that's for the next 2 years. But then there's an old policy from like the 80s where we could actually put in place a board policy around having remote participation. So this is not to go down a rabbit hole in this meeting. It's not, but I do think I've been looking into this for the purposes of our county, because we have, dozens of boards and commissions that have gotten accustomed to meeting virtually. And now people don't want to participate because they don't want to come. So we're sort of like, what do we do to kind of facilitate that participation, given that their county is so big? So I'd be open and interested to work on that with anyone who once, and certainly with Ryan, because all the work is yours. To figure out how we, whether it might make sense if we wanted to put a policy together like that. To allow some continued flexibility. So doesn't answer the question for immediately for people's participation today, but just kind of planting a seed that there could be a path in the next like 6 to 8 months to get something organized.
Is that something we can ask staff to come back to us with?
Yeah, I'll work
Ideas.
with staff and the vice chair to see what options are available,
That's certainly be welcome.
pending
Yeah.
the state change.
Chair,
Yes.
just I want to thank you for your comments on that. One of our council members, Steve Padilla, who's now senator, was on the California Coastal Commission. And so there were times when he would be up in Sacramento or Northern California. So we created a policy where he could still participate. But since he had to be at the California Coastal Commission meetings, we were able to be flexible on that. So I would be supportive of looking into creating a policy like that if there is a need to make sure we have a quorum here.
Great, thank you.
And I'm sorry for interrupting.
Go.
And to Director Parent's point, the chair does nominate the committee members, but the board approves them on majority votes. This would be the nomination process, since historically how SDCP's done it. But I just wanted to make that note for the record, considering.
Right, that's why I just want to make
Right.
do this again.
All right,
So
so I will nominate Mayor McCann, Councilmember Parent, and Mayor Aguirre to the Finance and Risk Management Committee, and would ask Mayor McCann to chair that committee. So if you could call for the vote.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Lindsay, yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
McCann, aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Karen, yes.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Amani, yes.
Vice Chair Lawson Remer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Yes,
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
terrific. And again, this is how we're gonna run our meetings. It's a collaborative effort. I get all the blame. You guys get all the correction. Okay, now the item, I want to do a time check. It's 11:30. I think we had promised folks that we would be done by 1 o'clock. Let's see if we can meet that goal. Item 10. So staff, please introduce yourself.
Morning, Chair LaCava and Vice Chair Charles Wilson Remer. My name is Lucas Russo, the Director of Data Analytics and Account Services.
Morning, Chair LaCava, morning, Vice Chair Lawson Remer, Tim Mangelmont, Finance Manager at SDCP.
Let's proceed with the presentation.
So good morning, everyone. We are going to now turn our attention to the rate setting process and our team's recommendations. As a not-for-profit public agency, our process really centers around providing both short and long-term value for our customers while maintaining a healthy foundation for our young and rapidly growing organization. Our goal is always to provide the lowest rates possible while taking a financially prudent approach. We recognize the economic challenges many San Diegans face and the need to keep customer costs down. We must also make financially responsible decisions that give our organization the opportunity for future rate and cost stabilization and to continue serving customers for years to come. Today, we'll be walking you through our rate development process to provide insight into the careful and thoughtful work that our team has done to provide sound recommendations to our board of directors. And now let's turn it over to Lucas, our Director of Data Analytics and Account Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So today, Chair LaCava and Vice Chair Lawson Remer and all the directors will be giving you a walkthrough our 2023 rate analysis. We're going to preview our rate development policy objectives. We'll also give you rate setting mechanics at a high level overview. Power cost is the primary driver of our rate setting deliverables. Reserve analysis and risk considered as part of the analysis. Scenarios analyzed, total bill impacts to the end use customers. And then finally, the need for 3 rates to ensure equity across all of our customers. So before you, the rate development policy objectives that the previous board adopted in November, with the biggest objectives being cost recovery. So we definitely have to set rates that are the bare minimum allow for us to recover all of our costs. We also have to set rates that allow for us to contribute to our reserves, as well as rate simplicity, also allowing for us to be competitive with SDG&E, equity, cost of service, transparency, which is the essence of why we're bringing this recommendation to the board for deliberation, review, and approval, unlike the IOU that essentially goes through the CPC process where there's not a whole lot of engagement from the public. And with that, I'll pass it over to Tim to cover our strategic goals.
Yeah, hi Chair, hi Vice Chair. Tim Engelmann again, Finance Manager. So a couple of strategic goals that the board adopted last June that are going to be pretty integral to this discussion are one, getting to 90 days cash on hand and 180 days cash on hand for our reserves with a target of 2025. And then developing rate stabilization reserve, which is also important, so that we could have rate stability and essentially potentially not have the winter summer rate duo that happens during the year. So a couple key things that are going to be integral to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So what does the process look like at a high level? The rate mechanics obviously allow for us to project our future costs for the year and then overlay the revenue requirements. And once we do that, then in order for us to remain competitive with the incumbent IOU in our region, we also have to take a look at what they're doing. And so at a broad high level, we would look at what their generation rates are for the upcoming year. We would factor in the power charge difference adjustment, which again, every customer pays, whether you're a bundle customer or CCA customer. We will also factor in the franchise fee and arrive at our resulting SDCP rates. On average, by system average across the board, SDG&E rates have increased by about 6 cents as of January 1st of 2023. And that translates to about a 43% average commodity increase as of the January 1st rate adjustment by SDG&E. Moving over to the next slide. So what you see in front of you is actually our rate development timeline. The top half of the chart essentially captures all of the action pertinent to San Diego Community Power that have taken place from January 2022 through January 2023. And then at the bottom, you do see similar actions that SDG&E has undertaken for that time frame. The piece that's highlighted orange, January 2023, essentially captures the moment in time that we're in today, which is the board review, deliberation, and adoption of our 2023 rates. Next slide, please.
Okay, so as Lucas mentioned earlier, the cost recovery for SDCP is one of the most important parts for setting rates. What you see in front of you is what our fiscal year 24 expense projection has been over time. So you'll see this time last year when our board set rates in January 2022, compared to today in January 2023, our projection for our costs has gone up, especially for cost of energy, which makes up more than 95% of our costs, has gone up 48% just year over year from January to January. So one of the key things to consider, and that we have considered as we're setting rates and are going to suggestions. Next slide, Kimberly. So the same thing plays out for fiscal year 25 and just what we project to spend for that fiscal year. Similar story, our cost of energy has increased by 55% from January of last year when we set rates to January of today. Kimberly, next slide. So just knowing that that cost of energy has increased in calendar year 2023, or sorry, calendar year 2022, when our board set rates in January of last year, they did it thinking that we would hit a reserve target of $374 million by the end of fiscal year 25. You fast forward to when we adopted that budget in June, that reserve projection has gone down to $145 million. And again, a lot of that has to do with just the cost of energy increasing over time. Fast forward to December of last month, that reserve projection has now gone down to a little under $89 million. So thinking about rates and what we want to try to set through this meeting today, again, thinking that through the strategic goals that we set, we do want to try to get to 180 days cash on hand, and then before that, get to 90 days cash on hand as a progressive target. That means 180 days cash on hand is the equivalent of $500 million just based on what our costs are as of today. Kimberly, next slide. So you've heard me say reserves a lot, and I think one of the big questions we get is, why are we thinking so heavily about reserves? There are many reasons why I think SDCP wants to build a reserve, especially to the 180-day target. I'll mention a couple of them. First is power purchase agreements. So thinking about power producers, credit grade rating for SCCP by achieving that 100-day target means less liability for these power producers, which means more favorable terms for SCCP, which means for our highest cost, which is energy, it means savings that we could pass on to customers year in and year out once we can achieve that credit grade rating. Another big reason that we want to get to 180 days cash on hand is just the long-term financial health of the agency. So all of our member agencies have similar reserve targets to SCCP. The other CCAs across the state, similar, have reserve targets similar to what we're trying to get to. And the board will remember in the last meeting, Beth from Cal CCA talking about at least one other CCA that didn't have enough in reserves. And so it's a big thing that we want to try to build so that we can protect the long-term health of the agency and continue to try to provide value propositions to our customers year in and year out. And then the last thing I'll mention is leveraging funds. So we know there's a lot of state and federal funding available. We all know about the Inflation Reduction Act. And for those who are familiar with trying to get those state and federal funds, a lot of them require leveraging, which means they want the local jurisdictions to put up their own cash before the state or federal government is willing to put up their cash. And so by achieving that target, that allows us to comfortably invest in leveraging funds that we could get from the state and federal government and just bring in more money to the region for some of the projects that we're trying to create. But many reasons for reserve. Next slide, Kimberly. Another big factor that's going into the rate setting discussion is just some major risk factors that we have to consider to protect the agency. So the biggest thing I'll mention is SDG&E and our competition with SDG&E just in terms of the rates. One of our consultants modeled out a scenario where similar investor-owned utilities across the state went through a similar cycle where rates have gone up. But then based on their experience, they have seen a big snapback in rates the following year. And so if SCCP were to try to compete essentially with the massive rate reduction that we think might happen, that would translate to just $600 million in just lost net income if we choose to do nothing today. A couple of the major risk factors that I'll mention: forward energy prices. You all saw that graph earlier where energy prices just went up pretty significantly in 2022. That translates to about a $340 million just risk factor to the agency if we don't build reserves and set rates appropriately. And the last thing I'll mention is participation rates. So SCCP does have a pretty good participation rate ranging between 95 to 97%, depending on the customer class you're looking at. There are some CCAs in the state of California who have as low as an 80% participation rate. If SCCP, for whatever reason, knock on wood, ever gets that low, that would be about $100 million in just lost net income to the agency. And so all things that we want to try to protect against, all things that we want to consider when we set rates and try to build reserves. Kimberly, next slide. Okay, so you heard me talk a lot, getting to the punchline a little bit here. As Lucas mentioned earlier, we know that SDG&E on average is increasing their commodity rates by 43%. And so what we're recommending and proposing are two different scenarios. The first, which is the staff recommendation, is a 3% value proposition to SDG&E. So that means 3 percentage points lower than what SDG&E is increasing the rates by. This 3% value proposition does allow SCCP to get to that 90 days cash on hand and 180 days cash on hand based on our best projection in 2023. And so this is what I call at least the reserve building scenario that staff is recommending. There's a second scenario that we ran, which is a 5% value proposition to SDG&E, so 5 percentage points lower than SDG&E. This does provide a little bit more of a value proposition to our customers, but this does push out that 180 days cash on hand to July of next year. And one of the things I'll mention, and we'll get to this in a few slides later, is we do know that SDG&E's rates went into effect on January 1st of this year. We know that SDG&E will likely do another rate setting cycle in January of next year. And so there's a little bit more certainty in this calendar year, just in terms of building reserves, which is one of the major reasons why that scenario one with the 3% value prop is a staff recommendation. So we could build reserves while there's a little bit of certainty in this calendar year. Chair, I know I rattled off a lot of things in the last few slides. I will take a moment and pause through the chair to see if you wanted to pause or keep going.
Why don't you just keep going?
Awesome.
Come back later.
Okay, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so kind of mentioning what I've been speaking about, but just graphically over time. So the 3% value proposition does allow us to get to that 180 days cash on hand by October of this year. And you'll see some of the hard figures down at that chart at the bottom. Next slide, Kimberly. And then, as I mentioned earlier, 2023 is the year where there is some certainty with just setting rates and just knowing what SDG&E has done already and we could potentially do in this year. Kimberly, next slide.
So what does this all mean to an average customer? In front of you is actually a simulation of the bill impact for a large commercial customer at the 3% value proposition that Tim was alluding to. The generation line item, that's the piece that we control. PCIA, which is the power charge and difference adjustment, and franchise fees. Those are assessments by SDG&E to all customers. We don't control those. But overall, the total generation related charges, you see the 3% value proposition there. And then when you factor in the SDG&E delivery and transmission costs, which again, every customer pays, the overall total average savings a customer can expect to see on their bill amounts to about 1.5%. And this is true for all other customer classes. This is large commercial. We're going to preview a small commercial customer on the next slide. And
This is large commercial. I don't want anybody getting too excited.
yeah, large commercial. The large commercial customer, but you see the exact same mechanics play out in the small commercial customer. Can you go to the next slide, please, Kimberly? So that this right in front of you is a small commercial customer, and you'd see the exact same mechanics play out for a residential customer as well. Next slide, please. On to the next slide.
Okay, so
Can we go back to the residential, because most of the people watching will pay most attention to this one. And we see the delivery charge is actually higher than what the generation costs are.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Thank you.
And this just assumes an average monthly usage for a customer on that rate cost to DR1, which is our most populous residential rate that we have for residential customers. And again, I mean, the monthly usage here, just as a point of clarification, this is it's notwithstanding, we didn't actually get a chance to recalibrate for 2022. Essentially taking into account the heat wave impact. But generally speaking, the mechanics play out where if the generation related charges are at a 3% value proposition, the total bill impact or savings would be about 1.5%. Thank you, Chair. On to the next slide, please.
okay, so just real quick on the 5% value proposition, our scenario two, this chart just shows you graphically how our reserves build over time with that line in orange. And as a reminder for the board, under this scenario, we do think based on our best projection that we would get to 180 days cash on hand by July of 2024. Next slide, Kimberly.
Thank you. So what does the 5% value proposition look like to an average customer? In front of you is a large commercial, again, same scenario. At a 5% value proposition, the total average monthly savings that a customer can expect to see is approximately 2.5%. And this is true, again, for a small commercial customer. Next slide, please. So 5% and the 2.1% total savings across total bill, and then likewise for a residential customer on the next page. Next slide, please. On to the next slide. So the last piece that we're going to cover today is with regards to traffication of rates. By traffication, we mean 3 sets of rates. Simply because SDG&E assesses PCIA depending on when customers actually departed bundle service. And so from staff's perspective, we believe that by trafficating our rates, that will ensure fair, equitable, and balanced rate structure for all customers in concert with our rate development policy that the board approved in November. Next slide, please.
All right, so to close our rate setting discussion, today we have presented you with 2 recommendations that invest in San Diego, it's a 3% or a 5% value proposition. We recognize that economic uncertainty and rising costs across the board have put significant stress on our customers and global energy markets. As a not-for-profit that keeps our community at the heart of all we do, it was critical to develop rates that create value for our customers today, while also ensuring we can provide viable and clean energy choices in a clean energy future. Both options provide savings for ratepayers and continue to build a strong financial foundation for our 3-year-old organization. Having solid reserves paves the way for us to ease the burden for energy costs. Approving one of these options ensures that competition continues in our local electricity marketplace for years to come. Appreciate your participation and also that of the members of the public who have joined us. Thank you and happy to take questions.
Thank you to our CEO and to staff. Why don't we go to public comment? Do we have any, Kimberly?
No public comment and no hands raised.
Okay, I'll make a couple of comments and then turn it over to the board. One, I appreciate that staff started out with our strategic plan that the prior board adopted last year. And we'll be having another strategic planning session once we can actually schedule all your calendars here in the next couple of months. It's an important driver in direction from the board to staff about how to conduct the operations of the organization. For those watching, we are only talking about electrical generation. That's what we're setting rates. We're not talking about the transmission and distribution costs that SDG&E charges, nor do we talk about that mysterious PCIA cost that is also imposed on us by SDG&E and the CPUC, which are fixed costs that we do not set. More importantly, we're doing this rate setting at a publicly noticed meeting, unlike the way that investor-owned utilities conduct their business and set rates. And I think as staff and our CEO really mentioned, it is a question about how do we set rates that are sensitive to our customers' needs while balancing the need for a still young organization, about 3.5 years old now, to establish the reserves that will, in the long run, really help us do business more cost effectively as we improve our credit rating. So there's a lot of things for the board to consider. What is most important to me is that value proposition. We're delivering a better product at a lower cost to what the investor-owned utility is providing. And when you look at the Power 100, which is 100% renewable energy, you're essentially at the investor-owned utilities cost or even cheaper than that, which I think really doubles down on that value proposition. So either way, I think we've got some good choices. I appreciate staff offering 2 different perspectives for the board to consider. So with that, I will open it up to the board. Anybody? Yes.
Can we go back to that other slide? Yeah. This one, great. Just had a comment, just want to clarify, this is really striking to me. So the analysis that just to make sure I'm really clear on this, is that our 100% renewable, 100% carbon-free product, where we're making no impact on our climate, where we are doing our part for our climate future, is going to cost the same as SDG&E's base product, which is only 45% renewable. Am I fully understanding this?
At the 5%.
Yeah.
Wow, that's I think is really striking, because obviously one of the things that I think is so important about the mission that we have here at Sandy Community Power is that we're really focused on a dual mandate of keeping rates low for ratepayers and really delivering quality services and quality products for the least cost possible for folks, and also really investing in our climate future and moving as quickly and as aggressively as we can to do something, to reduce our fossil fuel footprint, and to see that we can do that for the same cost that competitors are not. I think it's really a statistic that really stuck out to me.
And then a quick clarification, SDG is actually reducing their renewable energy portfolio, right?
So we're expecting to see that play out in this reporting year in 2022. In 2021, if I can correct me if I'm wrong, in 2021, our power on renewable mix was 54.9% relative to 44.5% of SDG, but we're expecting lower.
We're expecting to be the same ballpark in mid-50s. We're expecting them to be lower in 2022. Those numbers will be finalized until we go through the months long accounting process, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comment? Mayor McFain?
Yes, first I want to thank staff for their presentation. And I think the chair said this very well about the price sensitivity. We want to make sure that we keep our participation as high as possible. But since we are still a startup company, we want to maintain and build our reserves as much as possible. I just never know what's going to happen in the future, and our competitors obviously would like to see us stumble and fall. But I support the staff's recommendation of this 3% because that gets us quicker to fully funding our reserves. So if there's nobody else who would like to speak, I would make the motion to approve the 3% staff recommendation.
I would second that, Mr. Chairman.
We have a first and a second for the staff recommendation for the 3%. Any other comment?
Yeah, just a couple things. So I agree. You know, we'll be voting to support the motion and for a lot of the same reasons. I think it's really important that we, you know, I think it's the fiscally responsible thing to build a reserve and all that for all the reasons that staff has articulated. And I think I wouldn't necessarily be as comfortable with that as if we weren't still, you know, meaningfully cheaper than the competitor. And so that's a sort of an important factor for me. But I do want to just make sure that that I share with staff and the board members that by putting us into this position, I really am going to be expecting to look for, as what the supervisor suggested, fulfilling that dual mandate, that we actually use this reserve, use this new financial capacity that we're planning to build to secure greater, cheaper rates and a greater price differential from the competitor, that being part of something that we're setting up to do in the long term.
Any other board comment? None of our member on the remotely. So unless I see any other, we have a motion by Director McCann, seconded by Director, and I've forgotten your last name, Adina.
Yamani.
Yamani, excuse me. I apologize for that. So with that, Kimberly, can you please call the vote?
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Lindsay, yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
McCann, aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Fair, yes.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Yamani, yes.
Vice Chair Lawson Remer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
I vote yes as well.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Okay. Thank you all for the consideration. Thank you to staff and the CEO for the very hard work that took to bring this forward. Very much appreciate it. I appreciate the dialogue with the board. We'll move on to item 11. Approval of a new credit agreement to implement new line of credit of 150 million JP Morgan credit facility. Our CEO going to introduce this, or are we going to go to Dr. Washington?
Great to talk about.
That's good.
I'm happy to take it away. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, directors, for your time and attention today. The item that I'm presenting to the board this morning is still one, to the board this morning is approval to enter into an agreement with JP Morgan to secure a $150 million line of credit that would allow the CEO or myself to continue the negotiation to finalize the documents, which were pretty close there in the form and content that's included in the package this morning, thanks to our general counsel. And so with that, I will move to the next slide. So why the $100 million increase over our existing credit facility that's in place now? Key part of that, which you've heard through the rate setting discussion, are the increasing costs of energy. This $150 million line of credit will provide us cover as we continue to reach reserves and support us through our reserve stabilization process. In addition to that, there are some regulatory things that we have to contend with as well. In May of 2021, the California Public Utility Commission initiated rulemaking that would address concerns of IOUs with regard to becoming providers of last resort. That would step in the event that a CCA went under or deregistered, much like we're aware with WCE in 2021. Continuing through May of 2022, there were continued discussions with regard to financial security requirements. So right now, San Diego Community Power is required to post $147,000 in terms of NSFR. These rulemaking discussions could easily run that up to the tens, if not 20s of millions, which would expose us significantly because number one, we don't have the credit or the fiscal resources to respond to that large of a commitment. And then secondly, given the uncertainty without having the reserves to build up to that. If we had reserves, then an event like this could easily wipe those reserves out and put us in jeopardy. So in October of this year, staff, we decided to engage a consultant to help us put out a request for proposal to secure a larger credit capacity over and above the 50 million that we currently have in place. And JP Morgan came back with a proposal to provide us with $150 million in credit capacity for a term up to 5 years. Next slide, Kimberly. So again, just to reiterate, why the increase in credit? Why are we increasing our credit capacity by 100 million up to 150 million? Again, there's risk in terms of the outcome from the rulemaking proceedings currently occurring at the CPUC that directly impacts all CPAs with regard to the financial security requirements. Credit rating, this line of credit would also support us through our rate stabilization phase by allowing us to possibly not have to dip into our reserves as frequently, instead lean onto the credit facility. The credit facility would also demonstrate our strength in terms of fiscal stability by being able to obtain a credit facility of such a significant amount. Then we experienced this past summer two things. One, the unexpected reduction in rates by the IOU, regional IOU, with which had we responded to that by trying to provide a value prop at that point, that would have put us in jeopardy in terms of stabilizing our reserves and our financial stability. So prudently, the decision was made that we would hold our rates. A line of credit would again provide some additional support in the event that that scenario would have played out. And then also with the heat wave that we experienced, we had a line of credit facility in place, which we would have been able to tap into to use it. Fortunately, we had reserves sufficient enough to take us through that. Had we experienced a second heat event with the credit access that we had at the time, and with already previously using our reserves to weather that event, that would have put us in a financial jeopardy zone as well. Excuse me. So essentially, this credit facility provides us the extra cover as we approach our reserve building stabilization strategies. And then secondly, it would provide us with cover to respond fiscally for uncertain events that would occur. So with that, Kimberly, next slide, please. And so this is really high level, sort of the structure of the facility that we're asking the board to approve with regard to the limit, the credit limit amount. Also giving that we currently have a $50 million credit facility. This again increases that. The interest rates are pretty comparable with our current credit provider when you include in the undrawn fees that would be applied to the $150 million credit facility compared to the rate that we currently pay now with our current credit provider. So we would pretty much be awash at that. And then the repayment terms, essentially the loan would be payable in full at the end of the term. Next slide, please. So with that, again, we are requesting approval by the board to authorize the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer to execute the necessary documents to implement the new credit facility in the amount of $150 million with JP Morgan. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Watson. I know you did a lot of work to be able to bring this forward to package it all up and the discussions with JP Morgan. Kimberly, do we have any public comment?
There are no written comments and no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to the board for comments and a motion.
So just a question, just to make sure I understand. So we're scrapping our previous $50 million loan and we're taking out a brand new $150 million loan.
Yes, Director Hensy, that's absolutely correct. So we would replace the existing credit facility with the new credit facility. So the JP Morgan, the River City Bank credit facility goes away and gets replaced with the JP Morgan facility. Thank you for the question.
Director.
If there's no other comments, I'll be happy to make the motion to approve and thank you, Dr. Washington, and obviously the fiscal responsibility of this motion helps cement that and appreciate everybody's support.
Second. Yeah, a second by Director Parent. Yeah, thank you for your good work and not seeing any other board member wishing to speak. Will Kimberly please call the vote?
Okay, let me see if there's, let me make sure Tara Lawson is on just. Okay, I don't think she's joined remotely. Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, yes.
Director Hensy, how do you vote?
Hensy, yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
McCann, aye.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Yeah, Karen, yes.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Yamani, aye.
Vice Chair Lawson Remer, how do you vote? Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Thank you again, Dr. Washington. Then we'll move on to item 12, approval of the amended and restated Vikings Power Purchase Agreement. Byron, I believe that's you. Are you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Chair, and Directors, Byron Fosberg, Managing Director, overseeing the Power Services team here at SDCP. So good to see you all again here. Doing this last week. Good to see you all back-to-back weeks. So I'll jump into our process here.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you to speak up for the those participating remotely.
Apologies. I'll try to speak up and direct it towards the mic. Let me know if it's not loud enough and I can certainly do better. So I think we'd like to provide a little background here on our power purchase agreement that we have with Vikings Energy Farm. We're bringing to you an amendment to that agreement. So not to bury the lead, we're amending to delay the original online date by a year, increase the battery price that we're paying. We're also increasing the amount of renewable energy we're getting out of it and reducing the renewable energy rate a little bit. So just to preview that before we get into it. Next slide, please. So the background here is this is a power purchase agreement we have with Vikings Energy Farm, which is a renewable energy facility, solar and storage paired together, located in Imperial County in Polkville. Just our stories here. Originally, this came out of our long-term request for proposals in 2020, and we negotiated from that period into 2021, and then signed the deal on May 3rd after board approval in April of 2021. So again, as originally agreed, it was 100 megawatts of solar with 150 megawatts of battery storage. We expect to come online this summer and deliver to us for a term of 20 years. Expected, again, you see some of the standard terms here, the expected energy production of about 270,000 megawatt hours per year. They've got, again, at least 85% of that with fixed pricing for both the solar and the capacity over 20 years, and then no credit or collateral obligations for SDCP. And I'll note back to our credit rating and reserve building policy and discussion earlier. This is certainly this was notable at the time, right? We had no reserves, and so we're able to negotiate favorable credit terms. That becomes less notable the more reserves we have, the better track record we have, and credit rating down the road. So that was the agreement at that time. Next slide, please. And just for a little bit of background, these were presented originally in 2021, just to show you where Vikings Energy Farm is. There in the southeast side of Imperial County. Next slide, please. And you can see specifically here, just outside the canal there, north of I-5 on Imperial County. Next slide, please. So that was then. This is now, and as we've discussed, markets have changed a whole lot And that was 2021. It's well documented and, we've discussed a lot of it here too, just kind of, there's a number of factors related to the pandemic and supply chains, global unrest, that are causing not only fossil fuel prices to increase, but also supply chain impacts for solar modules and battery facilities, battery modules. So there have been significant impacts to this project. I'll note that Vikings Energy Farm was acquired by Arevon Energy. They're a large sophisticated developer, an energy facility operator and developer here and more broadly. They acquired it in 2021, and then kind of over this period, 21 and 2022. Despite, and I'll say, they have been well positioned, I think, to weather a lot of these constraints and impacts from the market and supply chain. Still have been impacted to us to some degree. So we've been in discussions with Arevon, who's developing Vikings Energy Farm for the better part of a year here, brainstorming, getting creative, getting really collaborative, and again, to be transparent, they have been good partners in this as well, in working with us to kind of share the goal of bringing this project online as soon as possible. And we're here to deploy clean energy solutions to make sure this project remains viable, to bring on the line as soon as possible, but also to reduce impacts to our customers, to our bottom line, reduce our risk. So that's, again, it's been quite a process of negotiating this as over the last year or so, but I'm happy to come before you today to say that we have this amended and restated PPA. Still, a couple I's to dot and T's across in the document itself. So the recommendation is, to agree to the form subject to general counsel and CEO approval. But all major terms are set. So and again, a couple slide or quick screenshot here I included from just to document the unprecedented market conditions and then the supply chain impacts that we're seeing across the board. Next slide, please, Kimberly. Thank you. So the changes here that we're seeing, again, I think it has really been a win-win in a lot of ways, and a creative approach here to increase the renewable capacity that we're getting from this resource. There's a slight decrease in the storage capacity, but again, it'll still be 150 megawatts built. It's just a matter of kind of transmission losses from there to the CAISO grid. You'll see that we're delaying the commercial operation date, but we're phasing it as well. The battery storage. So instead of the June 2023, battery storage will be coming online in April of 2024. The solar coming online in September. Again, really just trying to bring clean energy capacity online as soon as possible. So we opted to bring the storage online as soon as possible. The contract year, our contract term doesn't change, still 20 years. You can see the energy production increasing as obviously a function of additional renewable energy added to the project. The rest of the contract terms stay the same with a couple notes. I mentioned the solar price has declined. So again, that's a positive. Storage price, of course, it has increased. We're not thrilled about that. We're not thrilled about the delays, but again, I will note that we have done a lot of good and hard work, both in collaboration with Arevon to ensure that this is kind of the best of an unfortunate given market conditions. And the pricing, again, in a public meeting, we won't share here, but it was previewed with our energy contracts working group, which General LaCava, you were a member and previous board members as well, reviewed and authorized us to recommend that we move forward with negotiations. I'll note also, finally, the bottom note here is that we've increased significantly the collateral obligations of Vikings and Arevon as well, just to ensure that if there are future delays, and we don't expect them, we hope they don't happen, but if there are future delays or project failure, that our customers will still be made whole and protected out of that. Next slide, please, Kimberly. I think that should do it. So I'm happy to take any questions. I know there was a lot in there, but I'm happy to take any questions. And here's the recommendation.
Thank you, Byron. I know you took a lot of work to go back and look at this and negotiate and bring this forward with that. So Kimberly, was there any public comment?
No public comment, no hands raised.
I'll turn it over to the board for any questions or comments you have, and we'll need a motion on this.
If there are no other comments, I'll be happy to make the motion for the approval of the amended and restated renewable power purchase for Viking Energy. So move.
Do I have a second? I have a second by Director Parent. Not seeing any comment. We don't have anything from Director Gary. Just want to make sure we don't forget about her. But with that, again, thank you for the good work and all the staff that worked on that, pulling that together. I know that was a lot of good hard work for that. So with that, Kimberly, please call the vote.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aguirre, yes.
Director Hingy, how do you vote?
Hingy, yes.
Director McCann, how do you vote?
McCann, I.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Karen, I.
Director Yamani, how do you vote?
Yamani, I.
Vice Chair Lawson Remer, how do you vote? Chair LaCava, how do you vote?
Yes,
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
perfect. Thank you. Again, thank you, Mark. Good work. And all the staff that worked with you to pull that together. Let's move on to item 13, which is the last item on our discussion section of our agenda. Update on the community power plan. This actually does not require an action except to receive and file. But Colin, please introduce yourself and make the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We are just into the afternoon. I'm Colin Santillier, Director of Customer Energy Programs, and I'm going to provide a brief update today on the Community Power Plan. Finally, given the last hour talking about rates and bills, because one of the primary benefits of programs can be to reduce the bills of our customers. Those reductions can be through reduced energy consumption, through energy efficiency programs, or indirectly through when we start thinking about things like virtual power plants and what that can do to our procurement prices through it, indirectly impacting our customers' bill. So those benefits are one of the reasons why we're required to provide energy efficiency and demand response programs through our joint powers agreement. And one of the reasons why I'm happy and proud to work alongside a team that gets to deliver those programs to our customers. Next slide, please. But it all starts with a plan, and that plan we call our community power plan. So over the last year or so, as we've been enrolling customers, and the next few months as we enroll new customers, we've been spending time developing that plan. Our mechanics are spelled out here at a high level on the screen, and we're really focused on understanding the needs and priorities of our community, and then internally our organizational needs as well. We also looked at existing programs, and importantly, the awareness of those programs, or the access to those programs from our customers. And we coupled that with the available funding that we see in the near term. Bring all that together, and that is what constitutes our community power plan. Next slide, please. So looking at that same mechanics on a timeline, you can see we spent the better part of that 6 months previous to this, talking to our customers, trying to understand those priorities, examining the market, and then finally developing our approach for program delivery. And that's the focus of the short presentation today. But lastly, we do anticipate bringing a public draft next month, or in March. And hopefully we'll have a robust discussion at the strategic planning session scheduled with the board this spring. And then finally, we'll bring a final community power plan for adoption to the board sometime in the second quarter. Slide, please. So as I mentioned, we went through our market assessment largely through the fourth quarter of calendar year 2022. We looked at over 200 programs that are being offered by other CCAs, state agencies, IOUs. We supplemented that market assessment with some interviews with 10 other CCAs and other program implementers to really gather best practices on what the latest and greatest for program delivery is right now. When we combine duplicate or similar programs, this resulted in a culled list of roughly 70 program options that constituted our database of programs. Next slide. We then went through it and segmented each of those programs by different attributes. So think about a technical element. What actually does the program do? A customer segment of who it impacts, the delivery element. There's lots of ways that we can be incentivizing clean energy technologies, and they all have pros and cons. So when we broke down all the different program elements, like I mentioned, this database kind of served as the basis for the program prioritization framework tool that we then developed. Next slide. So this is only part of it. We took all that world of programs, and we effectively matched that with the needs that we identified through our community and organizational priorities. Each program attribute was effectively given a score for how strongly it aligned with the individual community and organizational priorities. And then those constituted scores for each program. We lastly aggregated general program types into different groups so that it would give us kind of start to spell out the initial steps for developing this high-level program strategy. Slide. So the program strategy, I should say the program tool is only a part of how we're approaching the program strategy. Funding is such a big part of how we're going to offer programs. So as a result, we looked at a program strategy in short-term, mid-term, and long-term buckets. The short-term bucket really, as we've been talking about today, as we're building our financial reserves, in the short term, we're going to be looking to leverage programs that use external sources or those that we can launch with relatively low cost to SDCP. We also are looking to leverage and amplify existing programs that are available right now that our customers have stated they need help either fully applying to or just becoming aware of. And then lastly, in the short term, we're hoping to pilot incentive programs that we've identified or we will be identifying for the midterm, which will be kind of more broader in scale and impact. So as examples for the short term, we have a community solar program that we're just very close to being able to launch. It's funded by the California Public Utilities Commission. We're hoping to launch some educational activities and then full-on incentive application assistance, which is quite common across other CCAs that we found. For the midterm, this is an area where we're hoping to have really much larger scale programs, both in terms of impact and in terms of cost. And the timing here allows us to really develop external funding sources for those programs. Probably the biggest example that we have found here is for external sources, we're pursuing the formation of a regional energy network, or REN, which will allow us to access public purpose ratepayer funds, bring those back to the region and program them out into energy efficiency programs. We're going to be coming back to the board in February for a detailed update on the status of the REN formation, and happy to talk in more detail at that point. We're also expected, as you heard, to have achieved our financial reserve targets by this midterm period, and that would provide an opportunity for the board to allocate more internal revenues back to customers via program if they so choose to do so. And then lastly, like I mentioned, the midterm programs are those that are expected to be larger in scale, more complex, take more time to design. And this is really, when we think about examples, this is where we're going to be actually incentivizing equipment in people's homes, looking at energy efficiency upgrades, and where we're expecting to do larger workforce development programs also. And then lastly, for longer term, this is a much harder area for us to plan out, given the changes likely in the market and our customer preference. So as a first step, prior to the long term, we'll be going back out to survey our customers again, trying to understand the advancements in the market. And hopefully we'll have some good lessons learned from short-term and midterm programs as well. All that aside, this is another area, also an area we'll be able to think about, again, more complex programs such as financing, and then also unique rate structures that right now we likely wouldn't consider, as we're relatively new to the region. 5 years from now, hopefully, as we're established, we would be able to consider rate structures that were unique to SDCP. So with that, I think we're ready for the next slide, Kimberly. At a very high level, next steps, as I mentioned, we're going to be developing a list of programs and types for the public draft, which we expect to release in March. We'll then take that back to stakeholders and customers, interest groups, get feedback during that public comment period. I mentioned the engagement with the board of a strategic planning session, hopefully to be scheduled in March. And then we'll have a final draft for the board adoption sometime in Q2, ideally in May, if possible, before we start thinking about budget for next fiscal year. That's still my update, Chair.
Great, thank you. Hey, Colin, appreciate all the work you've done and a lot of public outreach to get to this point. Thank you for that. Kimberly, is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay. I think traditionally for these note file, we haven't taken a motion, but if there's any board comments on this. Not seeing any. will include. Thank you again, Colin, for your very good work. So that's the last agenda item. So we'll turn it over. Does our CEO have anything to report?
I do not this month.
Okay. Any director comments? Yes.
Just a happy Lunar New Year.
There we go. There we go.
And why am I the only one wearing red?
I know.
I also brought some snacks for New Year's for everyone to enjoy.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll just add, thank you for rearranging your calendars to have this special meeting at this time. Obviously, our regular time is 5 o'clock on Thursdays, as you'll see for the rest of the meetings going forward. We'll try to stick to that unless something special comes up that forces us to adjust. Certainly, thank you to Director Aguirre for participating remotely. Thank you to members of the public that dialed in to watch this meeting. Appreciate everyone's participation. So we are adjourned until the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power to March 23rd, 2023. We are. Oh, you're right. Someone got ahead of themselves. February 23rd. Yeah, I thought that sounded wrong.